ready, Mom?
Yes,
Is the computer working now?
yes, yes.
Good.
You all probably never heard the story of John Henry, but then maybe you have and simply don't know the ins and outs of his comings and goings. Well, I'm here to tell you the story of John Henry and how he came to be in the county of Monongahela. The day John Henry was born, they say that all the bears, the birds, and even a couple of unicorns came out from the woods to see his birth. Word has it that the sun peeked behind the moon's skirts just to be able to catch a glimpse of the new baby. Well, the day that the mama and the papa came out on the porch to show off their new baby to the world, the young boy just jumped out of his mama's arms and started growing so big and so fast that he busted his head through the porch. And he found that so funny that he laughed so hard, and the moon was so frightened by the sound that she went back to bed where she should have been the whole time. The day after that, John Henry got up real early and got ready to help his dad rebuild the part of the house he had busted up. Only the sun wasn't quite up yet. The son had decided to go and take a rest. Decided to sleep in after the whole excitement of yesterday. But John Henry wasn't going to have none of that. He said, "Get up from there. I got things to do and I'd like to do 'em by." So the sun got itself up, brushed its teeth, wiped its face, and then came out from behind the horizon. So John Henry started his work. Not only did he manage to rebuild the entire porch, but he added a whole new wing and even put in one of them jacuzzis. And I remember after that, he chopped down an entire acre of trees, chopped them down into firewood, and then was just about ready for supper. It came one day that John Henry found that it was his time to leave and make his mark onto the world. And so, before he left the house, his daddy gave him a couple of sledgehammers. They weighed 20 pounds each, and they were made from a 4-foot shaft of whalebone. And he said to him, "Son, you gotta have something before you can go out into the world and make a living. So I hope that these hammers will serve you well in the days to come." And so John Henry set out for the Big Bend Valley out in West Virginia. He'd heard tell that you could receive good money working for the railroad in that area. Only along his travels he happened to come across a large boulder. And this wasn't no ordinary boulder. It was so tall that it would have taken the tallest man in the world half a week just to walk around it. And it was as hard as anger and big as hurt feelings. John Henry offered to lend the folks a hand, but the road boss just said, "That's all right, we'll go after it with some dynamite." John Henry chuckled at that and just said, "Whatever you say." So they set off the dynamite all around the boulder, and it made a terrific noise when they set it all off. Boom! Boom! Campity, campity, boom, bang, boom! It was so big and so loud that the Almighty himself stared out from over the parapets of heaven and said, "It's getting too noisy down there." It kicked up so much dust and dirt that the moon thought night had caught her napping and ran out to take her place out in the sky, only to run straight into the sun as he was going up that straight hill toward noontime. When the dust finally settled and cleared, the road crew was dismayed to see they hadn't even managed to knock off a single chip. So John Henry, laughing in the distance, said, "If y'all gentlemen would just get out of the way, I got me a bit of work to do." And so he took after that boulder with two of his hammers, and he pounded at them so strong and so hard that they say that the dust and the dirt managed to make a large rainbow that draped itself around his shoulders. And when the dust finally settled, the men saw that not only was the boulder gone, but there in front of it lay the straightest and most beautiful road they had ever seen. And then finally, John Henry made it to Big Bend Valley. And he had managed to get his work when one day the road boss said, "This here's a new steam drill. It can work as many Mount Rock as 10 men, and it never has to stop and rest." John Henry wasn't going to have none of that. He said, "Boss, let's have us a contest. Me against that steam drill." The boss laughed and said, John Henry, I know you are the best of your kind, but God bless you, even you can't possibly outwork a steam-driven machine. But John Henry was confident. He said, let's see about that. All right. Don't make me no never mind. We'll have just this contest. I'll start on this side of the mountain, and you'll start on the other. And so John Henry went to the other side of the mountain, and the day of the contest all was quiet. There were no birds singing, there was no wind blowing, and there was no water flowing. And then finally it started. The steam-driven machine made a terrific racket as it clawed for the mountain. I mean, rocks flew, dirt flew, underbrush flew, nothing could stand its path. Meanwhile, John Henry on the other side just went after it with his two hammers and never stopped to look back. When they were finally inside the mountain and in deep, the one driving the steam drill said, "Sir, I think we need to turn back. The tunnel is bound to collapse." But from the other side of the mountain, John Henry just laughed and said, "It's just my hammer stuck in wind, folks. Nothing to be afraid about. Just my hammer stuck in wind." And then finally, after a night and a day, John Henry met the steam drill at one side of the mountain. And the steam drill boss was flabbergasted. John Henry had managed to come a full mile and a quarter, but the steam drill had only come 1/4. And John Henry walked his way to the other side of the tunnel with his hammers over his head. And people were cheering his name and saying with great joy, "John Henry! John Henry!" And John Henry raised his hammers over his shoulders one last time, gave the biggest smile you ever saw, and then he just fell on it flat on his face dead. His poor, big old heart had burst from the strain. There was a dreadful moment of silence when they finally realized John Henry was dead. Some people cried, and others said they even saw the moon shed a tear or two. But then I don't know what quite happened next. All I do know is that everybody had the thought at the same time. And the thought was usually something like, dying ain't important. Everyone does that. What does matter is how well you do your living. And so the day afterwards, they put John Henry's body on a funeral train and sent him off to Washington, D.C. Loads of mourners came around the sides of the track to sing praises to his name one last time through their tears. "John Henry! John Henry!" They buried him on the White House lawn that same night, late while the Mr. President and the Mrs. President was asleep. Now, I don't know none about that, but I have heard tell that if you walk by the White House late at night, you can hear the sound of John Henry singing, and the sound of his hammers making their ring. And that's the end.
Nice going, Charles.
Thank you.
Did you memorize that? I think you
Well, more or less. I did omit one song though, because I felt a bit too nervous as it was.
Oh, yeah.